she is already dead. Not because she slipped, not because she fell, but because 8,500 meters above sea level, the rope holding her to the mountain has already begun to fail, and she doesn't know it yet. May 18th, 2019, south side of Mount Everest, southeast ridge route above the South Coronal elevation, 7,950 meters at departure. Temperature, minus 27 degrees Celsius before sunrise. Forecasted wind, 20 kilometers per hour. Weather window, approximately 6 hours. Emily Carter is 34 years old. She is from Boulder, Colorado, a structural engineer, analytical, methodical. This is her third expedition above 8,000 meters. She has climbed Aconcagua. She has survived a winter ascent of Denali. She believes in preparation. She believes in systems. She believes that risk can be reduced to manageable variables. At 1:14 a.m., and she leaves Camp 4 clipped to a fixed rope line installed days earlier by a Sherpa team. Her oxygen mask hisses softly with each inhale. Her downsuit crackles in the cold. Above her, headlamps move in a slow vertical line toward the balcony. The weather appears cooperative. No visible storm buildup. No high-altitude plume blowing off the summit. The jet stream has shifted north for the first time in a week. It is what climbers call good enough. But good enough on Everest is not safety. The temperature, though stable, is sitting at a threshold where nylon fibers begin to stiffen, and microscopic ice crystals form inside braided rope sheaths. At this altitude, materials do not fail dramatically. They weaken quietly. Barometric pressure is slightly lower than projected. Oxygen saturation in the blood will drop faster. Decision-making will degrade sooner. Behind Emily, more than 180 climbers are also moving upward within the same window. Congestion is not yet visible, but it is inevitable. At 8,300 meters, the fixed line she is clipped to has already been used by dozens of boots and metal ascenders in the past 48 hours. The outer sheath shows minor abrasion in several sections. Nothing alarming, nothing obvious. But one anchor point above the balcony was placed into old, wind-hardened snow instead of solid ice. It is holding, for now. And somewhere above her, just beyond the beam of her headlamp, something has already begun to loosen. Emily Carter does not think of herself as brave. She thinks of herself as disciplined. Born in Boulder, Colorado, she grew up in a house where mountains were visible from the kitchen window. And her father was a civil contractor. Her mother taught physics at a community college. Dinner conversations were rarely emotional. They were analytical: load, stress, failure points, margins of safety. Emily absorbed that language early. She studied structural engineering at Colorado State. Her graduate thesis focused on fatigue behavior in synthetic load-bearing materials under freeze-thaw cycles: nylon, Kevlar, steel cable expansion in cold climates. She understands how things break. What she does not fully understand, what no climber fully understands, is how quickly the human body joins that list. At 28, she began high-altitude climbing, not for social media, not for sponsorship, for precision. Mountains made sense to her. They responded to preparation. If you trained properly, acclimatized slowly, and respected weather models, outcomes improved. Her first 6,000-meter peak taught her patience. Aconcagua taught her how oxygen deprivation distorts time. A winter climb of Denali taught her that cold is not pain, it is subtraction. First sensation, then dexterity, then clarity. She documented everything: heart rate logs, oxygen saturation charts, boot insulation comparisons, rope condition reports. On Everest, she believed she had minimized uncertainty. She had trained for 2 years specifically for this summit push: hypoxic tent sleeping, rotational acclimatization on the mountain, strict hydration protocols, conservative turnaround times written in permanent marker inside her glove cuff. 11 a.m., no debate. Her expedition operator had a solid record. The Sherpa fixing team was experienced. Oxygen bottles had been weighed and pressure tested. She trusted the system. More importantly, she trusted herself inside the system. At Camp 4, the night before the summit attempt, she double-checked her ascender teeth under her headlamp, inspected her carabiners for microfractures, ran gloved fingers along her safety tether. Everything looked intact. Her rope was not hers personally. It was part of the fixed line installed for all climbers on the southeast ridge. She clipped into it without hesitation. She had studied rope failure in controlled lab environments. What she had never studied was cumulative microabrasion at 8,400 meters after hundreds of weighted ascents, frozen melt cycles, and steel crampon contact. She believes discomfort is temporary. She believes fatigue can be managed. She believes risk can be calculated. At 2:47 a.m., moving steadily toward the balcony, she feels strong. Her oxygen flow is set to 2.5 liters per minute. Heart rate elevated but stable. No headache, no nausea. She is focused on rhythm. Step, breathe, slide ascender. Step, breathe, slide ascender. Behind her, climbers are beginning to bunch up. Ahead of her, the rope line runs upward into darkness. Emily does not feel fear. She feels momentum, and momentum on Everest is often mistaken for control. Everest is not climbed. It is negotiated through a system. On the southeast ridge of Mount Everest, above 8,000 meters, chaos would be fatal. So climbers rely on structure. Fixed ropes are installed each season by specialized Sherpa teams. These ropes are typically 10 to 11 millimeters in diameter, kern mantle construction, a braided sheath protecting a load-bearing core. They are anchored at intervals using snow pickets, ice screws, and rock pitons driven into exposed sections of limestone and shale. Each anchor point is meant to distribute load. Each rope is meant to carry weight one climber at a time, but in practice, dozens of climbers clip in simultaneously. The system works because of sequence, because of spacing, because of patience. Every climber attaches to the fixed line using a mechanical ascender, a cam device with metal teeth that grip when weighted. A backup safety tether is clipped with a locking carabiner. Crampons bite into ice. Downsuits restrict movement. Oxygen masks limit peripheral vision and muffle sound. It is an assembly line on a knife-edge ridge. Above Camp 4, the route narrows. To the right, a 2,400-meter drop into the Kangshung Face. To the left, the western Coombe and the vast fall toward Nepal. Movement becomes vertical. At bottlenecks, the balcony, the south summit, the Hillary Step, climbers wait. Waiting means standing still in minus 30 degrees Celsius wind chill. Waiting means leaning on the rope. Every pause transfers body weight onto nylon fibers. Every metal ascender scrapes the sheath. Every crampon point that accidentally kicks the line leaves a small cut, often superficial, almost invisible. The system depends on anchors being solid. An ice screw placed into blue glacial ice can hold over 10 kilonewtons of force. A snow picket driven into wind-packed snow holds far less, especially after sun exposure, freeze-thaw cycles, and repeated loading. On summit days with heavy traffic, ropes are not unloaded for hours. They remain under tension. Emily is now approaching 8,350 meters. The line has slowed. Ahead of her, as a cluster of climbers waits at a steeper section below the south summit. Some are switching oxygen bottles. One is adjusting a crampon strap. The rope is taut. She leans slightly back into her harness to rest her legs. Her weight transfers cleanly through her carabiner into the fixed rope, into the nearest anchor. Above her, 40 meters up the ridge, an anchor placed into compacted snow instead of solid ice is holding under cumulative load. It was secure when placed, but snow is not ice, and systems that work in isolation behave differently under stress. Nothing dramatic is happening. There is no visible failure, no loud crack, no snapping sound, just incremental force distributed across fibers that were never meant to carry continuous load from dozens of climbers at once. Everest is not unpredictable. It is mechanical. And mechanical systems fail gradually until they don't. At 8,420 meters, the line stops completely. A climber ahead is moving slowly across a narrow traverse below the south summit. The ridge steepens to nearly 40 degrees. Exposure increases. Everyone waits. Emily shifts her weight onto her right leg and rests back into her harness. The wind has strengthened slightly, now closer to 30 kilometers per hour. Not dangerous, just enough to pull heat through seams and zippers. She notices her left toes feel muted, not painful, just distant. She flexes them inside her double boots. The sensation does not fully return. Her oxygen mask fogs at the edges. She lifts it briefly to clear condensation. Cold air floods in, sharp and dry. She replaces it quickly. Behind her, a Sherpa guide moves down the line, checking on climbers. You warm?" he asks through his mask. She nods. "Yes, fine." It is automatic. She does not want to slow the group. She does not want to be the variable that forces retreat. Her oxygen regulator is still set at 2.5 liters per minute. She considers increasing it, just slightly, but decides against it. The summit is still above. Bottles must last through descent. Another climber above shifts abruptly. The rope jerks. Emily feels the movement transfer through her carabiner, a small, sharp vibration. She looks up. Nothing appears wrong. But 35 meters above her position, the anchor placed into hardened snow compresses slightly under cumulative load. A millimeter, maybe less. Snow crystals fracture internally. The picket tilts forward by a fraction of a degree. No one sees it. No one feels it distinctly. The rope, it's already under tension from multiple weighted climbers, tightens further. Emily rolls her shoulders, trying to maintain circulation. Her fingers are becoming slower inside her gloves. Fine motor control is diminishing. Not dramatically, just subtly. She tells herself it is normal. At this altitude, discomfort is expected. At this altitude, everything feels slightly wrong. A radio crackles somewhere above. Congestion at South Summit, moving slow. The delay extends, minutes pass. Cold is not an event, it is a process. Blood flow to extremities decreases, muscles stiffen, reaction time lengthens. Emily shifts her stance again. Her right crampon front point bites securely into the ice. Her left foot searches for better purchase. The rope hums faintly in the wind. She feels a slight, almost imperceptible give, like nylon stretching. It could be imagination. It could be normal load redistribution. She does not inspect the section above her. She does not request space. She does not unweight the line. This is the moment where the future becomes negotiable. And she chooses to stay clipped in, fully trusting a system she believes is intact. The line does not move for 19 minutes. At sea level, 19 minutes is negligible. At 8,450 meters, it is erosion. Wind speed increases gradually to 35 kilometers per hour. The temperature, already below minus 30 degrees Celsius with wind chill, begins stripping heat through compression points in Emily's harness and boot bindings. She is standing on a 35-degree slope, front points engaged, heels slightly dropped. Calf muscles begin to tremble. She shifts weight again, left, then right, but each adjustment requires coordination that is no longer precise. Oxygen saturation in her blood is falling into the mid-60% range, even with supplemental flow. Cognitive narrowing begins. Peripheral awareness shrinks. The rope is still under load from above and below. With each micro-movement of climbers ahead, tension pulses downward like a slow heartbeat. The snow anchor 30 meters above continues to compact under cumulative force. Snow is not static. Under pressure, it behaves plastically. It densifies. It shears internally. Every minute the line remains weighted. Fibers inside the rope compress against one another. Frozen condensation within the sheath stiffens it further. Nylon loses elasticity in extreme cold. Its ability to absorb shock decreases. Emily's left foot feels absent now. She stamps it lightly against the slope, trying to restore sensation. The movement transfers through her body into the rope. A small jerk. Above her, another climber slips momentarily and recovers. The rope snaps tight for half a second, then settles. Shock loading. Small. Contained. But cumulative. Her breathing is becoming louder inside the mask. She increases her oxygen flow to 3 liters per minute without consciously deciding to. The regulator clicks softly. The summit is less than 300 vertical meters away. Turning around now would mean descending through the same congestion. Waiting feels logical. Stillness feels efficient. But stillness at 8,500 meters accelerates decline. Core temperature drops slowly. Fine motor skills degrade further. Grip strength weakens. Reaction time extends by fractions of seconds that matter when balance shifts unexpectedly. A thin veil of spindrift begins to move across the ridge, driven by the strengthening wind. Not a storm. Just enough to obscure the surface texture of the ice. Emily leans back slightly more into her harness to rest her calves. Her full body weight transfers into the fixed line. The rope tightens. Above her, the snow anchor tilts again. Another fractional degree. The ice screw below it absorbs more load than it was intended to carry. No one hears the internal fractures. No one feels the incremental failure. Nothing dramatic happens, but everything is getting worse. And physics does not care how close she is to the summit. At 8,520 meters, the line begins moving again. One climber clears the traverse, then another. The tension in the rope shifts from static load to incremental progression. Emily exhales slowly and prepares to climb. Step, breathe, slide ascender. Her right crampon front points into a patch of hard, wind-scoured ice. solid. She shifts her weight upward and advances her ascender along the fixed line. The rope feels rigid, cold-soaked, less forgiving than before. She moves her left foot to match. But beneath the thin crust of ice is a layer of compacted snow, hardened but not bonded. Her left front point penetrates deeper than expected, then slightly sideways. It is not a dramatic slip, it is a minor instability. She compensates automatically by pulling harder on the ascender. Her full body weight transfers upward onto the fixed rope in a single sharp load. At the same moment, as a climber 10 meters above her stumbles while unclipping around a previous anchor, he drops suddenly against the line before regaining balance. Two shock loads converge within a second. The rope snaps tight. The snow anchor above, already tilted, already compacted, rotates forward. Just enough. The picket pulls free, not explosively. It slides out of the compressed snow with a muted, granular sound, like fabric tearing slowly. The load transfers instantly to the next anchor, an ice screw placed in brittle, sun-weakened ice. For a fraction of a second it holds. Emily feels the rope shift, not downward, but sideways. A subtle lateral movement. Her ascender cam bites harder into the sheath as tension spikes. The ice screw above begins to torque under angled force it was not designed to absorb. Metal contracts in extreme cold. As threads grip less dynamically, ice fractures microscopically around the screw shaft. Emily's left foot, still unstable, loses purchase completely. Her body swings slightly backward. All of her weight is now suspended on the fixed line. There is no dramatic scream. No awareness that this is the dividing line, just a mechanical sequence unfolding faster than human reaction time. The ice screw fails. It does not rip free entirely. It fractures the surrounding ice. The anchor dislodges. The entire section of rope above her loses its primary support. Gravity takes control, and there is no corrective movement left that can stop what has already begun. When the upper anchor fails, the rope does not immediately detach. It transfers load. Force moves downward through the line in milliseconds. Emily is now fully suspended and approximately 1 meter off the slope. Her ascender remains clamped to the rope. Her backup carabiner is still locked. The problem is no longer her attachment. The problem is what she is attached to. Above her, the failed snow picket has already slid down slope. The ice screw beneath it has fractured its placement. The next anchor point, 18 meters higher, absorbs the sudden dynamic load of multiple climbers simultaneously. The rope between anchors tightens violently. Nylon, already stiffened by extreme cold, has reduced capacity for elongation. Under normal conditions, dynamic rope stretches to dissipate force. This fixed line is semi-static. It is not designed to absorb shock from cascading anchor failure. The load increases beyond 8 kilonewtons. The upper anchor holds briefly, but the force vector is now angled, not downward, but outward from the slope. Ice screws are strongest under direct shear, weaker under outward pull. The ice fractures. The second anchor releases. Now the rope section supporting Emily and 3 climbers above her is detached from 2 upper points. Gravity accelerates the mass. Boots lose contact with the slope. Crampon points scrape uselessly against ice. Emily's ascender remains engaged, but the rope itself is moving. The next anchor down slope, originally intended only to stabilize descent traffic, suddenly becomes the final point of resistance. All combined mass transfers into that single placement. Climber above, approximately 85 kilograms with gear. Second climber, 90 kilograms. Emily, 78 kilograms with oxygen system. Total dynamic mass, over 250 kilograms accelerating. The rope tightens around the lower anchor. Carabiners rotate under load. Metal edges press into frozen nylon. The final anchor is a snow picket placed horizontally in wind-packed snow earlier that week. It was adequate for body weight stabilization. It was not designed to arrest a multi-person fall. The picket bends first, then the snow around it shears. The entire anchor rips free. Now there is no fixed point. The rope, once a system, becomes a falling line of nylon and steel. Emily is no longer a climber on a mountain. She is a mass accelerating down a 40-degree slope at 8,600 meters. Her ascender remains attached to a rope that is no longer attached to Everest. Cause and effect. Boot lost purchase. Shock load applied. Anchor displaced. Load transferred. Secondary anchor failed. Cascading release. Final anchor overloaded. No single failure alone would have been fatal. Yet together they form inevitability. There is no decision left to make. Only gravity finishing the sequence. Acceleration at 8,600 meters feels slow at first. Low air density reduces drag, the slope steepens below the south summit, the surface alternates between hard blue ice and wind-scoured crust. Emily falls backward initially, still facing uphill, rope coiling around her legs as it descends with her. Her right crampon catches briefly against ice. It twists her sideways. Her helmet strikes the slope once, a sharp impact against frozen, ridged surface. Then she begins to slide uncontrollably. The detached rope above her tangles with another falling climber. Their combined mass increases velocity. They move as a single, unstable unit. Within seconds, they cross 50 meters of vertical drop. There is no controlled arrest. At this angle and speed, ice axes cannot penetrate deeply enough. Reaction time is too slow. Coordination at extreme altitude is already compromised. Her oxygen mask tears partially loose during rotation. Cold air floods her airway. The regulator hose snaps under tension. Without supplemental oxygen at this altitude, cognitive function collapses rapidly. She tumbles again. Her body rotates over a convex roll in the ridge where the slope transitions sharply toward the Kongshung face. The fall becomes a free drop, approximately 300 meters. Impact occurs on an ice shelf below the ridgeline. Multiple blunt force traumas occur simultaneously. Thoracic cavity collapse, cervical spine fracture, bilateral femur fractures, internal hemorrhage begins immediately. Even if she had retained consciousness, which she does not, survival would have been physiologically impossible at that altitude with those injuries. Her oxygen cylinder detaches and continues downward separately. The rope, now slack and torn in sections from friction and metal abrasion, lies draped across the slope above. Wind moves across the ridge again. Within minutes, spindrift begins covering the disturbed snow. Other climbers freeze in place, clipped into independent lines, unable to descend immediately due to exposure and risk of further anchor instability. There is no dramatic sound, no echoing scream that lingers. Only radio transmissions, clipped and controlled. Multiple fall, south side, below south summit. Her body comes to rest on a ledge that is rarely reached, at 8,200 meters, in the death zone, where rescue is theoretical. And survival, after impact like that, is not. Recovery is not immediate. At 8,200 meters, retrieval requires stabilization of the route first. The remaining climbers must descend. Anchors must be replaced. Rope sections must be reinstalled. 2 days later, a small Sherpa team descends carefully to the ledge. Emily's body is partially covered by wind-driven snow. Her harness is still secured. The ascender remains clamped to a severed section of fixed rope. Her oxygen system is detached. Regulator broken at the coupling. There are no signs of prolonged survival after impact. Medical assessment confirms instantaneous catastrophic trauma. Cervical fracture at C2. Massive thoracic crush injury. Rapid internal blood loss incompatible with life. Frostbite is present on exposed fingers and toes, but post-mortem. Not causal. The investigation focuses on the anchors. The upper snow picket is located 40 meters above the initial failure point. It shows progressive shear displacement consistent with cumulative loading, not sudden improper placement. The ice screw below it is recovered with fractured surrounding ice still attached to its threads. Laboratory analysis later confirms brittle ice failure under angled dynamic load. The lower snow anchor, the final point before full system release, is bent nearly 30 degrees at the shaft. The surrounding snow shows compression layers from repeated weighted pauses. Radio logs confirm congestion at the south summit lasting 27 minutes. Multiple climbers admit to leaning heavily on the rope while waiting. Weather data from that morning shows no storm conditions. But wind speeds were within accepted summit parameters. Visibility was stable. There was no avalanche, no equipment defect in Emily's personal gear, no reckless movement, just cumulative force in a system operating near its threshold. The rope itself, tested after recovery, shows sheath abrasion consistent with crampon contact and repeated ascender cam pressure over several days. No single component was catastrophically flawed. Each element functioned within expected tolerances, until they were required to absorb forces they were never designed to share simultaneously. Everest did not act unpredictably. It behaved mechanically. Snow compacted, ice fractured, nylon stiffened, load transferred. The mountain does not need drama to kill. It requires only patience. And on May 18, 2019, high on the southeast ridge of Mount Everest, and a system slowly accumulated stress until one small step made it irreversible. The lesson is not about bravery, it is about thresholds. Because on Everest, death rarely arrives as a surprise. It arrives as a sequence, and by the time you feel it, the mountain has already decided. There is no next act. On Everest, there rarely is. The system failed. The sequence completed. Physics finished what it started. What remains is only aftermath. Paperwork, satellite data, quiet conversations in base camp tents, and families receiving controlled, carefully worded phone calls. Emily's summit window was real. Her preparation was real. Her discipline was real. What failed was margin. At 8,500 meters, systems operate without redundancy. There is no backup rope team standing by, no rapid response rescue unit, no second chance once anchors begin cascading. The mountain did not change that morning. The weather did not suddenly turn violent. No avalanche swept the ridge. The danger was cumulative, not dramatic, and that is why it feels avoidable, until it isn't. High-altitude disasters rarely begin with catastrophe. They begin with waiting, with leaning back into a rope for just a little longer, with assuming the system can carry one more load. Everest does not kill through chaos. It kills through thresholds. And the most dangerous moment on a mountain is not when things look bad. It is when everything looks good enough.